Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Getting Through the Holidays 2017 here from transCODES, Day 2, December the 22nd. And welcome back if you are already familiar with this format here of guiding you through some of the energetic stuff that is happening here during the holidays, especially for those of us who are energetically sensitive or who are empaths. My name is Jona Bryndis, and I am an energy healer and energy coach. And many of you know me from weekly energy updates and reflections on things that energetically sensitives and empaths go through at a certain time. All right, in this format here, which by the way is one of my favorite formats, you are watching the edited recording right now. But what we do is we reflect on the current energetic tensions, if you will, the stuff that's in the air, the weather conditions. I will also report a little bit about what's happening in the crypto market, since this is a part of the reflection of how some of these collective energies integrate into our physical, and particularly at this time where there's a lot of new stuff going on every day. And then I will greet our panel guest for today, which is Roger Schwartz from Recover Your Heart. Roger is an energy worker who specialized on recovery, on addiction work, and we'll illuminate sort of how we regard addiction, addictive structure through energy work. We bring in the ego as part of our addictive structure, so we're not going to be primarily talking about substances, but mostly behaviors, and in particular the patterns that play out within our own ego, which is why it is so hard sometimes to work with our addictive behaviors or addictive patterns. And as always, you have the opportunity to ask questions, and I really, really want to motivate you to do this. I know the majority of you are watching the recorded version, but for making this a bit more interactive, it's really, really cool to have you in the live chat and to have you ask questions. One more thing, I've announced that we're going to be channeling the energies for the next year. This is something that I've already done for myself, and I usually do this with the audience. I found out, though, that due to the some of the technical restrictions that I have here with our internet, that it's difficult for me to do this in this YouTube live setting. So there will be a special session for our self-healing community here at transCODES, where we're going to do this with people connected through our webinar software. So that part is going to be omitted, but therefore I hope nonetheless we'll be able to discuss some of these subjects that typically come up during the holidays, especially for empaths and energetically sensitives in depth. All right. So welcome to day 2 of getting through the holidays, and enjoy our. The crypto market today was very interesting to observe. Those of you who are familiar with Bitcoin and the whole cryptocurrency ecosphere may not be aware of this, but there is, since 2 days, a sloshing of Bitcoin and some of the major currencies going on, a bloodbath, as many called it. And this was very unexpected. It's showing us that larger forces are moving into the market, trying to manipulate. There's many different aspects to that, rumors, conspiracies, and so forth. I talked about this just a little bit in the energy update, because I find it non-conducive to talk about some of the biggest fears that we have in regards to cryptos, namely that they're not safe. Really what is happening here right now is sort of a concentrated action to bring the price of Bitcoin down, so that when the big institutions, the banks, and some of the governments as well begin to move into the market at a lower price. So unfortunately, because the market is so irrational and fear-based, this has led to a lot of newbies to panic and to sell low when they bought high. And this is one of the sad things of open source, is that when you have sort of a grassroots movement, when you have a lot of people that invest in small amounts, then usually the volatility is what can get to people. In other words, we're dealing with a highly emotional market. We're dealing with software in regards to wallets and exchanges that is not really equipped to handle these amounts of transactions, and who have also been accused of insider trading. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now, Wild West style, as I have warned everybody about. And so for those of you who have not really observed this in the last 24, 48 hours, don't even go there and don't even look at anything, because in my humble opinion, these things will have themselves equaled out in a couple of days. There is really no way of stopping this movement into freedom and a free transaction without a middleman. And so it is no reason to believe that all this is just a bubble and it's about to burst. On the contrary, we see this kind of move, as unexpected as it was, as a means for the larger institutions to create a slightly favorable, or more favorable price for them to enter the market. So for the future, as I've already mentioned in the last energy report, consider that the crypto market, as inspiring and as wonderful as this movement to its sovereignty it is also in its birthing stage. And I compared it with the psychology of a toddler, really, comparing the developmental stage that it's in. And you've got to really handle it this way as well. So sometimes you really just got to stay calm and not react to prevent, either your own nerves going down, or to prevent financial losses. All right, so things, by the time I'm recording this, things have already begun to settle again, and this is something that those of you with steel nerves, or those of you who are just now entering the crypto ecosystem and have just created a Bitcoin wallet, this is a good time to buy for you, because I don't think with all the volatility and potentiality for price corrections, I don't think that we're going to see that low of prices again, and I don't think we will. And so stay calm, don't get caught up in news, whether it's about the cryptocurrency or political developments right now. This intensity that I've announced here for this week is also showing in those areas. Okay, and so if you just sit this out and consolidate and ground yourself and don't go into reactivity and practice responsibility instead, then you don't really need to be worried about anything. And so let's see how this is developing tomorrow. I'm going to keep you updated. Big rumors are on the horizon, namely that one of the big four, Litecoin, is pairing up with Facebook the inventor of Litecoin has sold all his own personal coins, and as part of the agreement with Facebook, which is probably going to be one of the major first moves of mainstream companies into the crypto market. So it's exciting. Stay tuned for the crypto news sensitives. And every day I'm going to bring in, or I hope every day, I'm going to bring in a different panel guest who will help me to illuminate a specific aspect of dealing with holiday issues. And I'm very proud to announce that we have Roger Schwartz here today, who is an energy worker who specialized on addictions, addictive behaviors, and recovery. Now, Roger, I need you to call in for me here on Skype. Today, I'm very proud to have Roger Schwartz from Recover Your Heart here. Roger, can you say hi to the audience?
Hi, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Jona.
Well,
it doesn't seem like a year since we did this last.
I was just going to say, how could I not have you on here, Roger? You and I have been trying out, experimenting with different programs throughout the holidays over the past years, like 24-hour standby coaching and counseling, and just being there for people and just really and letting them know that they're not alone. And so this YouTube live screen or screencast is really more of an attempt here to get a little bit of a broader audience. We used to use webinar software Forward, which works really well, but it requires so many different steps to sign in. So Roger is someone who was actually trained here at transCODES originally. And Roger, you and I, we reached way back.
Yes.
And let us know a little bit about you, and then just real briefly, and then I'm going to talk a bit about addiction and coping and why this is such a big subject throughout these holiday days.
Well, I have a background in addiction and recovery. When I was young, I ended up in a rehab program for a month, and that was at 22, actually. So I started, I believe the first substances I tried out were leftover drinks on my parents' table, and they made me feel warm and fuzzy and took away fears that I had all my life. I was very introverted when I was young, so I was afraid of everything. So that kind of started loosening me up and got me interested in that. So I went into rehab at 22, spent many active years and beautiful years in AA. And then I I started a new career and moved away from home and everybody I knew and went into working a lot and didn't care much for the meetings. So I went down into my darkness for a while there, and then I got tired of that and found my way to transCODES and loved the energy work, and I decided to learn how to do it, and it fits right in with my recovery background. It takes things to a deeper level, though, which is really cool.
So you have extensive experience with 12-step programs, and I think this may have been one of the reasons why you felt attracted to energy work. This is a sort of like what I am experiencing with a lot of people who actually have who have actually faced some of their addiction, their recovery process before, that they can very easily relate to energy work, and especially here to how we doing things at transCODES, where the majority of the work is really about working through our deeper stuff, through our hidden stuff, through the stuff that is unconscious, that is unaware to us, and showing us the dynamics, showing us the patterns, and really beginning to feel empowered enough to actually making real changes in life. All right, this is not about, and we're not talking here today about substances. We're talking about addictions and addictive structure and coping. And that's something, if you guys have been listening to my energy reports in these last couple of weeks, I've talked a lot about dealing versus coping. And I want to introduce this here for a second, Roger, if you bear with me, just to create sort of a common terminology. And then I would love you guys to share and to ask questions. So please, hey London, hey Canada, hey Australia, awesome. I want you guys to ask questions so that we can really take advantage of this here. The reason why I picked the energies around addiction and coping here as sort of the second day is because it is really underlying many of our behavioral, many of our emotional, mental, and sometimes also spiritual and physical problems, and not so much, like I said earlier, in regards to substance abuse, but how our ego makes us do things, of course, makes us do things in quotation marks, that somehow, in some way, produce a feeling in us. And Roger, I loved it when you said, you by accident as a child, you found those leftover alcohol or glasses with alcohol in your parents' home, and it made you feel warm and fuzzy. Warm and fuzzy is probably one of the simplest, but also most direct ways to describe how it makes us feel when our ego feels good about things. And how does it make us feel when our ego does not feel good about things? Well, can you make some examples, Roger? What sort of the opposite of warm and fuzzy, the opposite of feeling connected, of feeling, good?
Oh my, like the world's out to get us. Everyone's judging us. Constant fear.
Like not belonging.
Yeah, longing. This is what's behind it all, pretty much. Longing to feel a certain way or to feel fulfilled.
All right. If we take this like super basic definition that you just made of what's underneath addiction, all right, a longing. Okay, a longing.
Well, yes, my entire life I felt that something was missing.
Right,
I felt
and then the
unfulfilled.
seeking.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then the seeking, right? So it's the
you're
longing.
always looking for that fulfillment or love or wholeness in something outside, So we search and we go to extremes to get that filled, and it's always temporary. So we just keep repeating and want more and more. No satisfaction.
Right. This is actually the second characteristic of an addiction or addictive structure, right? Is that there is no saturation. It is not possible to actually ever feel that way that we are longing to feel. And whether it's the money, whether it's if I could only lose 20 pounds, then people would love me more, or if I could have a bigger house, or if I could have the right relationship with the right partner, then my life would be different. If I could have the right job. I mean, who of you guys have ever thought in those terms, if I could ever ... then my life would be different, or then I would feel differently? Who of you have ever felt that way about anything in their lives?
That's always in our imagination. We can create that feeling. It's like a fantasy.
Right, but this is it takes a long time for us to realize that, right?
Yeah, we often don't. I mean, it took me years to start to understand that I was looking outside for everything, and that the answer was within me.
Right. And then one of the reasons why these things stay in the hidden for us, and instead of us being able to connect with them, and through connecting with it, even if it's our pain, to become able to heal it, we are seeking some kind of distraction. Yes, we see, yes, fantasizing, or it's not always substances, you know. So when we talk about addictions, it has to be very clear that in energy work, we actually realize that there is no difference between an addiction that causes our ego to make us do things, you know, to remain in sort of repetitive patterns of behavior, and keep on doing the same thing, keep on attracting the same type of experiences, that these things are all linked in with, you know, our addiction, and that there is no difference between, you know, whenever I feel so and so, I do this and this, and addiction. And the piece here that connects all that is the ego. All right, our ego is there to help us to survive, right? I mean, you know, we talked about this in length. I wrote a lot of articles about this, how it's important not to see the ego as the enemy, you know. And yet, though, it is the part in us that keeps, you know, motivating us to do certain things, that even if we know better, even if we are in this place where we already understand, you know, like say, the emotional, the mental, and even the spiritual aspects that play in there, and we still do it, and we still feel like shit, and we'll do it again. Okay,
Yeah, it's
that's
funny,
addiction,
but it's,
guys.
you know, it's a cycle that brings deep shame to us sometimes.
Right, and this, Roger, is an important thing you bring it up there, because it's not exactly something, no matter how educated we are, no matter how intelligent we are, no matter how spiritual we are, it's not something that we feel we can stop.
Yeah, we actually can't. You know, in AA, they tell us that the mind is just, there's this sickness, you know, that you have, and the mind will just take you anywhere it wants to go, as you can't trust it at all. Right. So you'll thoroughly convince yourself that what you will plan to do is okay this time, or to do it again is okay.
Yes. Isn't that fantastic?
You have no defense against it except, you know, support group, or when you first notice those thoughts coming in, to have some kind of action plan to take immediately before you go into those things, because you will not know that your mind is messing with you.
Right, and that's something that I've talked a lot about in the last couple of weeks. It is the subjectivity of our perceptivity. Okay, this sounds very mental, but it is, you know, how our mind actually messes with us. And I like to use a terminology that is that feels less judgmental. In energy work, we learn to look at things a bit more neutral. Okay, basically, what we see is that we're all equipped with a mind that has a certain architecture on a physical level, that has a certain interaction on a biochemical level, and you know, that has a certain feed of information through our senses. All right, this is basically what our mind is. And before an experience, anything that happens here right in front of you, it actually arrives in the brain. It went through several stages. This is something that people don't realize, is that our mind really isn't the end of things, and it isn't, definitely not the beginning of things. Before our brain actually processes something that, like, say, I'm seeing something, like I'm seeing you, Roger, and you know, and my brain sort of formulates something like, you know, the way I feel towards you, or perhaps even memories that I had with you in the past, or anything like that. Before this happens, a shitload of energetic stuff has already happened, okay? And that goes anywhere from my unconscious trauma being triggered, a certain a sensation, and I'm not talking just the regular senses here, like our eyes and our smell and our, sense of touches, sense of smelling, and so you know what I mean. I'm talking about our perceptivity, our energetic perceptivity takes on a lot more information. It's a much broader bandwidth what I'm receiving energetically, even if I'm not trained. And this is some of the issues that we're running in here with energetic sensitivity or being an empath and addiction. And, as an energy coach, I can tell you guys that there is a direct link between energetic sensitivity, energetic perceptivity, and addiction. This is not always ego addiction, not always substance addiction. In very many, if not all cases, it's more of like an ego addiction, which means that there is something in us, and it has the exact same energetic coding, that there is something in us that prevents us from being able to see reality for what it is. And that part is then creating emotions in us, it's creating sensations in us, it's triggering memories, all kinds of stuff that we're not aware of, all right, that triggers certain energetic frequencies in us. All right, so if we break this down to the energetic level, then every situation just becomes a matter of frequency and resonance. Okay, and this may all be like a bit too technical for you, but what's really behind this is like a bit of a discipline to see things in a more a neutral way. All right, just like how I suggest not to look at the ego as the enemy. All right, the ego is the part in us that is creating or providing this addictive structure in us. It is directly tied to our nervous system. But because it is tied to our nervous system, it is also limited to it. And that's why a lot of these recovery systems or recovery self-help or recovery therapy and so forth include something far beyond just like, well, all you got to do is control yourself, right? All you got to do is stay away from whatever the problem is, right? As soon as you can see it, you can change it, right? Yeah, good luck with that. That's not working that well for us because it has nothing to do with what we're seeing. It has nothing to do with what we're understanding intellectually. Roger, do you have any comments in regards to the logic of the addictive part in us? You mentioned a few things.
Where does logic fit in?
I would love you guys to. I would love you to elaborate on how your ego mind basically tricks you into, coming up with justifications, coming up with all kinds of things before you've even, engaged in whatever it is that you're engaging, just to be prepared that, the ego can sort of agree to it.
What you're talking about with the energy and stuff coming first is quite easy to understand, because that's typically what triggers the desire for one thing or the other first, is the feeling that sweeps through the body. And then the mind just goes along with it pretty much and convinces you it's okay, I believe. I just experienced it while you were talking about it.
What is the hardest part, Roger, in dealing, consciously dealing with our ego mind, okay? And our addictions. And let's just name a few more addictions, okay? Hi, Trinidad. Okay, we have, of course, substances, okay? So any type of substance. And we'll talk... People?
I see it, yeah. People, experiences, shopping, control.
Addictions that are based on activities or behaviors, right? Yes, like shopping, for instance, or having to do things in a certain way. To a degree, OCD can actually also be regarded as an addiction. Okay, something has to be fulfilled. A program has to be run all the way to the end. What else? Um,
There's a lot of things, like being in specialness, being in the spotlight. For example,
exactly.
if you're having to be like center of attention and that doesn't work, you would just run off.
Right, needing validation
Yeah.
at all times, or needing the feeling to be in control. That goes with OCD as well. Then also expressive things like that goes into the direction of center of attention. Where people have to have a certain feedback from other people, okay? And of course, the negative or pathological expression of that would be narcissistic, that you constantly need sort of the fuel, the juice from other people. All
Well,
right.
yeah, I mean, typically there's a lack of self-love and no connection to your source, your higher power. So you're trying to get all your love and validation from those around you.
Right, and
What you're talking about.
our system is extremely inventive when it comes to that. And what is the problem with our mind? How can we actually even identify that we have an addiction, whatever that is, whether it's a person or an activity or a substance? How can we identify? You wrote a really beautiful article a way back, Roger, talking about this.
I don't recall that one actually.
Oh yes, you do. It's the one, where you engage in things that it was the one with Mr. Wright and Mrs. Wright. Uh,
Oh yes.
but it was about like how you actually identify that you are dealing with an addictive pattern. You're dealing with an addictive pattern. How do you know that you're dealing with an addictive pattern? One is the mind that justifies, and it will typically justify before you've even done it. It will already create a reality within yourself that embeds or prepares, the way you see your situation. Then it it justifies everything that you are going to do. That's a big one.
Yeah, totally convincing yourself that everything's going to be okay again.
Right.
And then you're always getting the same results, right?
That's a big one. It's
yeah,
like
you return to it continuously.
Yes, it's the repetitive aspect of it, the churning and the looping. It's the doing this, keep on complaining, keep on, realizing that certain things are not good, maybe not conducive for you, or maybe not, making you happy, and yet you keep engaging in them, and you keep doing it over and over and over again. And one of the main signs that this is somehow linked into addiction, not necessarily again, something that has to express on the outside. This can also come from the inside, like ego addiction. Is that you cannot see this when you're doing it. You are absolutely blindsided to it.
Right. You think people are crazy when they have a talk with you, right? Set you down and try to bring you up to truth a little bit. It's like, what are you talking about?
And
but a lot of these things, society, they're common in society, so they're not seen as an issue, especially when you get into like codependency.
Yeah, so let's talk about this a little bit. How does codependency play into addiction and recovery? What is your experience there, Roger?
Well, it's no different than substance addiction, pretty much. We're still looking to fill at whatever we're longing for within us, right? With some external thing.
Okay.
And
what is codependency? Can you define this for us? I mean, just so that people who are not familiar with this word,
I guess you could see it in a number of ways. It would be supporting for approval someone's bad habits, so they would stay with you, perhaps, or.
So that's one of those typical examples where, like, say you have an active addict in the family, say, and very self-destructive with maybe substances and you involved, and you still support it or enable it.
Sure,
that would be one example.
Just because you may not think you deserve anything better, right? So these people are probably both at the same level of self-love.
Okay, so codependency can express in actually supporting or enabling destructive relationships.
Right.
It can also show in actually supporting or enabling destructive behavior in others. It doesn't always need to be in conjunction with relationship with myself, but I'm
yeah, and strong dependence on someone else. Like I know people that their entire focus of their life is on how someone that are interested in, or maybe multiple people they are interested in, act or react toward them all the time, trying to figure out what's going on, whether or not they like them or not. Your entire life can get wrapped up in.
I mean, this could even be expanded to like what the neighbors think, or what
Sure.
my community thinks about me, or what the parish members think about me, or the people at work. Right? It is
Yes.
when something on the outside seems to replace something on the inside, and we are not aware while this is happening. So codependency literally only describes, and this word has already been sort of revised. They actually nowadays call this co-addiction, but it always shows that there is that it's in conjunction with other people. It's in conjunction with behaviors, with relations of others, and usually tied to the feedback that we get from the other person.
Yeah, we're dependent upon it to feel okay about ourselves, right? If there's any question, then we go into doubt and we start spiraling down.
Yes. And one of the biggest issues with that is, of course, is that it can create a very toxic or very disruptive, very destructive behavioral patterns in relationships. And in my experience, it's almost like 80% of all relationships that have a codependent structure, which means that there may not be a substance involved, but where there's structures that show, and most of the time it's actually both partners involved in that, okay, where they enable and support and make themselves dependent on destructive behavior with another. In other words, no matter how dysfunctional the relationship may be, we stay in it. We cannot see the destructiveness of it. And even if we do, our, the ego mind that we talked about earlier justifies it in some ways. So those guys, those of you who never had an issue with substances, or never were in therapy, or never went to a self-help group, if you want to know that you have sort of, I'm assuming that everybody has addictive structure in it, but if you want to find out, if you have addictive structure in you that runs part of your life, that dominates part of your behavior, then one of the indicators is definitely when you feel that you are justifying things. In fact, I would actually go as far as saying that every time I'm justifying something, I am enabling it. I am supporting it with my energy on whatever level that is. Be it through drinking the drink, smoking the cigarette, giving the other who just degraded me a good feeling about this, or making myself depend on it, and so forth. There's some kind of justification that has to take place in order to bridge, in order to compensate for this incongruence that is taking place, right? I mean, incongruence is whenever, the how I want things on the inside and how things happen on the outside, how this does not match up. Or in general, how things do not match up. And in order to bridge things that do not match up, something has to happen. We have to put something into it. And that's on an energy level, that is very clear how this displays. We can help people to identify what it is that they're putting into it. And obviously, it is easier to identify these things when there is actually, substances involved because they're it's known. It's part of our education that we know what is unhealthy for us. But then there are all these behaviors. And Roger, I mean, if you think back, not just your own experiences, but also everything that you know from working as an energy healer, as an energy coach who's specialized on recovery, and your own 12-step track record, like the number of years in AA that you spent. What do you think? I mean, this tricky question, but just spontaneously, what do you think is harder, Roger, to stay away from alcohol or to heal this hole that you mentioned earlier? This
The alcohol
longing.
was easy. I mean, when I stopped, I was at a point of total surrender. I was either going to die, I knew that, or find help, and I just gave up. And I knew at that point, it doesn't happen for everybody this way, but I knew immediately at that point that I was never going to use again. So then I went for years where working on healing everything, doing everything in AA, being really involved, getting close to a lot of people, spending a lot of time in the love and stuff that is in the 12-step programs. And still, I would continue to pull this stuff back to me. So,
what stuff are you referring to?
Well, slower vibrational stuff, anger, fear, judgments, victimhood, specialness. As long as I was very active and around people, well, it would go in cycles, actually. It would be like I would clear this stuff for a while, and then I would suck it right back up, depending on what was going on. I guess it was triggered. I don't know what would trigger it, but possibly some low self-worth stuff returning. But I'd bring it all right back in. My insides would just get all balled up again, and my head would go nuts, going crazy. So it's been definitely taking care of all the underlying things is the most challenging part of it. It just doesn't go away when you take away the substance. It's just starting at that point.
And in your experience, do people tend to replace their original substance with maybe certain behaviors, or how does that go?
Well, yeah, sometimes it's relationships, food, different activities, gambling. I've seen much of that stuff take people right out of the program, because they get into that work.
Porn, gaming nowadays, screen addictions or social media addictions.
Anything that brings that rush and that false fulfillment, it happens a lot. Some people just go into avoidance. They think it's going to change overnight. This all takes time, through exposure to, like I say, 12-step is the healing resonance is there is like unconditional love and compassion. You have to spend time in this to process all of these things and change a lot of your perspectives. Your ego, a lot of things have to change in order to...
So when somebody comes to you, Roger, and wants your help in working through different maybe different stages of recovery or different aspects of their addiction. Okay, how does this how did you integrate energy work into your knowledge that you picked up through the 12-step work and the experiences that you had in energy work, and how did this come together for you? And why did you decide to do something that is quite unusual still, right? There's not a lot of energy workers, energy healers out there that have specialized on addiction.
No, well, it's still unfolding as to where it's going. But typically, we start with for either an energetic clearing or remote energy transmissions, and this basically is work within the same kind of field that you can find in a 12-step program, one that is not controlled by ego, because not all 12-step meetings are good.
Okay.
So we
Can
work
you
with.
hang on? Can you explain this a little bit?
Well,
Someone who's never been.
there's a lot of ego comes into the program. You know, a lot of people have surrendered before they come, but a lot haven't. And then some folks, after they're in recovery for a while, the ego will step back in and they'll find themselves feeling special or wanting to control meetings, this kind of thing. So it's not they're not allowed to unfold and bring in the resonances that are important and healing for everyone.
So, okay, when someone has okay, now I'm getting a lot. Now it's getting hard for me to take this apart because we have different aspects here. We can have an ego addiction, and we can have a substance addiction. And now you're saying that even within the recovery field, right, there can be ego involved in this. So, am I actually getting from from one thing to another? Is this what you're saying? Are you saying
that? What I'm saying, the ego is kind of sneaky, and it wants in, so it'll creep back in. Usually, when a person's at their lowest point, is when they're most willing to set the ego aside. Okay. They're open to change, humility, open to other people's input. That kind of thing. But after a person is in recovery for a while and they start feeling good, they can allow the ego to come back in.
Okay, so this is really interesting the way you just formulated that. So basically, what you are saying is that it's not enough to just refrain from drinking or abstain from whatever it is that you identified in the first place. What you're helping people with is, be it after they've already stopped drinking or taking drugs or, identified codependency and so forth and stopped the relationship, you help them to actually prevent, these ego patterns to come back in other ways, right? In other ways, maybe in ways that they are even harder to identify. Personally, I think a substance addiction is actually relatively easy to identify. But what is underneath all that energetically, and why we are often so helpless in healing this, it can stay hidden for an entire lifetime. And so what I hear you say, Roger, please correct me, is that you're using energy work to actually sort of bypass the ego mind, to bypass some of these things that are aware to us, and in order to get to the places within a person's system that cannot so easily be manipulated by the ego, and you help them to reconnect with those parts, which then becomes sort of this higher vibratory healing that you described earlier. Be it through unconditional love that comes in through a group or a person. This can also be created in energy work, and so through this exposure, you're helping a person to become more empowered to actually see the things that keep them in their patterns. That was a long sentence.
Yeah. well, of course, the energy work involves working with faster, higher vibrational frequencies, right? And we often need to bypass the mind, but when you're aligning to these energies during a session, mm-hmm. you are able to see things from a higher, different perspective, like you're observing your mind or your life, so you have less of an emotional attachment to it. So you can imagine if you can align to love or unconditional love, compassion, forgiveness. These are all energies that are available through our inner higher power, through universal divine field, I guess you would say. But we connect to that through our heart. But until you are able to do that, until you get all the lower frequency stuff out of the way, you can do that within the energy sessions, because that field is held. And I can help people, at times I do things to help them align to that and experience it. So when you're observing things from this place, you can process, transcend, transmute a lot of things that were holding you back.
And that you didn't even know were holding you back, right?
Yeah, I mean, it could be something that's not even in conscious memory, right?
Right.
Some of this stuff happened to us when we were very young, just programming and stuff we got like that, or traumatic experiences.
Or even karmic aspects or past lives, that is something, we, as energy workers, we have to be open to this, because we actually see those things in people. We see the attachments.
So we do the work within these faster frequency fields, which bypasses the mind. I mean, there's actually processes that during the session sometime that come in to help the mind get out of the way, or people might fall asleep, actually.
Yes.
And this can help the process because the resistances of the mind don't come up. Say, for example, if memory of 20 years ago where somebody wronged you, say they dumped you in a relationship or something, if you feel that coming in during a session and you're not quite aligned to the higher frequencies yet, your mind may go into it and want to still attack that person. So that's a form of resistance.
Or anybody who looks the same.
At that point, right? So you're just going to hang on.
Right, or anybody who looks the same, or smells the same, or dresses the same, or cooks the same food, or speaks it. Right? I mean, this is really where psychology is not just enough.
Right.
These things
that was the issue. This is why I found some relief with the energy work too. This is how I would pull these things back in. I'd be triggered all the time, being sensitive. I was very sensitive to
and this
other people's energies.
Right, and Roger, we have a question here. We have a bunch of comments here, but I think they're coming in delayed. So please, guys, forgive me if we are not responding to you directly. I think we're getting them delayed. All right, so just keep asking, okay? Repeat your question if we're not responding to this. Here's a very cool question from Energetic Guide. You're asking if addiction to white shadow aspects, if that, or white shadow, if that is part of our addiction too. Bam! Talking about energies on the 22nd of December. Today is White Shadow Day. And it triggers everything. And the entire smorgasbord of, coping mechanisms. All right. Roger, do you want to talk about this? How white shadow, and maybe you have to back up a little bit and explain what white shadow is first.
Why don't you? You're probably better at that than I am, Jona.
People are getting tired of me talking so much.
I'm not.
Yes, so Energetic Guide. I'm going to try to put this together so that people can see the connection, because this is actually exactly what some of the issues are in regards to the holidays. And today I'm feeling this extremely strong. We had energy sessions here today with a group of people who are going really deep with us this year in the ongoing Grace Gaia Sophia Marathon, where we basically hold an energy field for 72 hours, and we're literally reading out the collective and our own energy fields at that time. And white shadow is probably the thing that stuck out the most. The problem with shadow aspects, and we just used different words, when we talked about some of justifications and addictions and hidden things, we were basically talking about shadow aspects, right? Because those are things that are virtually invisible for us. And so this character, this nature, that they're invisible, that we have or seemingly have no access to them. Some people are aware of their shadow traits and they suppress them, okay? So the suppression and repression, those are also mechanisms to deal with things that we cannot really love about ourselves, or that we cannot really accept about ourselves. But white shadow is a specific form that, quite frankly, before I was really introduced to energy work, I did not know what white shadow is, and this is something that I could only experience with working with other people's energy fields, and then of course discover how much of that I have in myself. Namely, the kind of shadow trait that has all these characteristics, as I just counted them, for that is destructive, that is in the hidden, maybe in the repressed, that keeps being justified within myself. But here's a specific thing about white shadow, and that is that it's accepted in society, or actually sought after. That it is something that makes me look good. It is something that produces a picture of myself, that projects sort of a certain part of me outward in order to, and maybe you can answer this question now yourself, I mean the audience, in order to cover up for some other things. And that's what makes white shadow really difficult to identify. And that's why white shadow falls into the category of addiction, because just like you said, Roger, the driving force behind addiction is trying to find something on the outside, right? I mean, what would the neighbors say? Well, how does my wife like what I'm doing? Or my parents, or, the externalization of our inner power to things outside of us is endless, okay? This is one of the biggest issues that we have identified here, and that I've written a lot about, is on our spiritual journey. We cannot really, we have to stop trying to seek or trying to find something on the outside. We have to stop the seeking, and it starts really with seeing a divinity itself, as something outside of us. And so here with combining energy work and recovery, which, I'm dealing a lot with on a daily basis as well, because I have very strong addictive structure. And I see this in a lot of energetically sensitives and empaths as well, is the integration of teaching a person how to reconnect with their inner higher power. Because then, all these things that we're seeking on the outside, and white shadow falls into this category. Okay, so I'm obviously not, someone who, has gone through a major, like, say, drug addiction or anything like this. But I have, or used to have, a white shadow that could fill entire buildings, okay? And this is so typical for empaths and energetically sensitives, because we have this ability to feel what other people feel, and sometimes we can feel things before they feel things, all right? And we can use or misuse our energetic sensitivity to manipulate others as well. And so white shadow can be something that can give us the illusion of control, the illusion of connectedness with others, and even the illusion that we are healing the world. And all these other aspects that come in with that, that we have to fix somebody, that, and then with that also the fixation on the other, like this is a problem that you are having, and I can help you. Okay, that's white shadow. And that is something that is very difficult to identify when we are caught in this. I hope, Energetic Guide, that this kind of illuminated, because this is an advanced question, really. Not a lot of people can make that connection. I hope that this illuminated it. Any questions here for Roger? Yes, and somebody else is commenting that that there's a lot of white shadow in workplaces. Yes.
There's a lot of white shadow pretty much everywhere, I think.
In certain societies, okay? Having lived in different countries, and I can say that there's, that different societies promote it more than others, okay? But overall, our collective is at that place, and it is no coincidence that right now, at this time of the year, where it's all about the deeper connection, that we have been talking about in these energy updates, where white shadow becomes the driving force for everything, whether it's getting gifts, using your last money just to look good.
So in part, yeah, the holidays, for me, I saw a lot of the need to make people happy with your gift or to get a certain response out of them.
Right. And that can, this is one of the reasons why, for instance, domestic violence, depression, anxiety, conflict in families, suicides even, and a lot of split ups happen after Christmas. Okay, because the white shadow part in us, the white shadow addiction in us, right, can hold it up for just till the 25th or the 26th. And then, bam, we're not getting enough juice anymore. Not getting enough fuel, not enough justification to continue doing this. And here we are in that hole again.
And you don't know what to do. So it's just another false self that we let go of as we learn to reconnect to our heart and find,
Right, so false self as something where we sort of project a different identity or even identify with some kind of identity that we're not truly
protect ourselves or get some need filled, yes.
Or to produce a certain picture, like, Miss Goody Two Shoes or the White Knight in shining armor. Those are very typical coping mechanisms that show a white shadow aspect. Yeah, cool. I mean,
so the energy work pretty much is what it is to it begins usually with quite a bit of clearing, and over a period of time, through experiences of heart connection in the sessions, a person learns what that's like and is able to spend more time with that. And this is where what the longing is for, by the way. We're looking for basically the love that we can connect to there. Mm-hmm. So the more we connect to that and experience it from within, the more of these things we begin to let go. We have no fear anymore. We have no need for a lot of them, so they just eventually fade away. But as we work along through it, we start to fine-tune. We become more and more sensitive. And this is what the coaching helps with this, to point out places where we're still externalizing, or maybe perhaps need a change of perspective and such like that. But you learn to work through it yourself. Eventually, you feel where things are pulling you.
So when somebody signs up for an energy session with you, Roger, we've had Jeff Casper here yesterday, who explained how energy clearings go, and you are trained in energy clearing as well. So we don't need to go into this, but what I would like to know from your experience. What is actually more important for the person, or what do you think is, maybe not more, but what do you think is the missing ingredient in many other therapies or things that are already out there, but that do not really provide a permanent or long-term healing from addiction, which, by the way, is an actual problem in our society, okay? But
it's simply, to me, it's the lack of focus on connection to our higher power being within us. I mean, that's a true, that source is not something that's just imagined. It's like very real, and it's energies that are available to us at any time we choose to connect to them. We can, this is our power is in our choice of what we focus on, pretty much. Yeah. Either we can look to the external, or we can go internal, where we have access to this source energy.
So basically, you're teaching people, or you're helping people, assisting them in finding that access to their higher power again, the very thing that most likely created the longing or the need for a certain activity or a certain substance and so forth, so that it's more about the underlying issue, namely the lack of connection, the lack of feeling wholeness from within.
Yes.
and instead of going against whatever it is that they're doing, or like say teaching them how to refrain from alcohol, say, or from a certain behavior, you show people and reconnect them with these things so that they become empowered to do this in their own self-healing and with the needed self-love and self-nurturing to feel connected, really. When I asked you the question, what I had in mind, to be honest with you, was that you actually say it is the talking about things. So I don't know, Roger.
Oh,
As an energy healer and energy worker, one of my experiences is that while I'm like working my ass off, right, in energy sessions and all that, and I write reports and everything, the most healing thing for a lot of people is actually the talking about it.
well, yes,
It's the
that's
connecting
definitely
part.
true, and that's actually my favorite part also. But the energy sessions are very helpful in that they, because of the resonances that are available there, it gives people a reference, and we can actually do work during the sessions to help them feel the heart connection. And
So, what would you
so
recommend to someone?
that's a beginning. But the talking, a lot can come out during the talking. I mean, years and years of stacked up emotions can be let go in a minute in the talking. You know what I mean?
So, what would you recommend someone who comes to you, like say Roger, I mean, let's just create a case here. I've used to misuse alcohol, maybe even food, sex, or whatever. I've identified that I have addictive structure. I'm not doing this anymore. I've been on my spiritual path for a long time, but there seems to be things in my life that keep repeating that I can't shake off, or that I still have a hard time identifying. What would you recommend as a case study here before we let you go? What would you recommend a person? What would be sort of a typical recommendation from you, Roger, when someone comes to you, to your practice here at recoveryourheart.com?
Probably just start with an energy session and then coaching definitely afterward, and we'll just follow out the energy wherever it leads. Talk about what's bothering the person, if anything, what they would like to change, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, usually it becomes pretty clear in a short period of time what needs to be discussed and whether or not a perspective needs to be changed, or if there's still healing, things that need to be let go of, forgiven, whatever. It usually doesn't take too long. They're usually pretty much they guide themselves, the sessions, I don't go in with any specific steps that here you need to do this, and that. We just discuss and see where things go, because they always go where they're needed. Sure.
And how long, in your experience, Roger, when somebody is really serious about this, their journey as well as really getting to this place of connectedness, of self-nurturing, how long, and I want you to be honest, okay? How long can this take for a person?
Well, it can take months, or it really depends upon the ego and how willing a person is, how much desire they have to change. Because
but let's assume somebody is really serious,
really serious.
Yes.
Change can happen immediately, and you can go to deeper levels, continue to go to deeper levels over in a very short period of time. I mean, you can go week to week. You can see change if a person is willing to follow what they're guided or what come up in our conversation. There's usually steps to take. There's usually some form of action that needs to be taken. If a person is willing to follow through with those things, change can be very quick.
But
But
I would like to ask the audience here who
it doesn't always work this way. Some people I'm a perfect example of this. I mean, I used to I had several families pretty much that adopted me when I was in the program, and I would cycle it back into these things of self-pity and victimhood, and it's just pretty much to get attention. And I love so much the deep conversation, bringing the feelings out. So I would just keep going back into the stuff, you know. But you see, there's a lot of things that go on here. The more that we can connect to our heart, the more we're willing to surrender and let these energies flow and be willing to walk forward through things without reacting to them and staying with our higher power. The more we trust that, the more we learn to love ourselves, find out we're okay, the more we become willing to let go of these other things, right? So there's a lot of things that happen that need to happen at the same time. So it's not just cut and dried.
Right, and in my experience, it can take a lifetime. You know?
I've been working on it for years. I mean, I've made lots of progress, but there's finer and finer things to go into as we go along. We want to.
I mean, first we address the physical, right? That's the refraining from the whatever substance or, you know, destructiveness of something. And then we work on the emotional, and we try to feel out, you know, why do we feel so depressed, or why do we feel pain? Why do we have anxiety? And so forth. And then we work on the mental understanding of things, you know, the intellectual understanding of things, and try to investigate maybe the psychological patterns and so forth. And then we begin to investigate the spiritual aspects of something, you know, that oftentimes the restrictions that we have, and the reason why things are so difficult for us to see is because they are embedded in our deep belief systems, all right? And that has a lot to do with our spiritual views and our understanding of spirituality. And then when we add energy work to our journey, it like you said, it adds a whole new perspective onto things, and it sometimes feels like we're starting from scratch again, which quite frankly isn't really the case. It is just that we go into the deeper layers. And talking of seriousness, or talking about like willingness, it really just is a matter of you know, how willing a person is to address things on a deeper level. And I know, Roger, you can laugh about this when I say this, but we have a running joke here at transCODES, and that's, there's always another level.
There is.
So just when you think...
It's funny, but it's very true, yes.
Just when you think, and when your ego tells you, ha, I've got it, I'm over this now, oh, this is no problem anymore, you know, that's when you get to experience another level of your white shadow, or your ego addiction, or whatever the coping mechanism.
But it's really cool, because it doesn't matter how many layers there are. Every time you work through, when you come to this amazing new place that you've never experienced before, and it's like, okay, I'm ready now, bring it on. And you go through another one, and it's just continues to be amazing. Okay,
audience, dear audience, please ask questions. All right, and while you know you're processing sort of some of the things that we talked about here, was a very deep conversation, so not like textbook, you know, we on purpose we talked about things here in sort of their way of how they come forward. But while they're doing this, I'm going to introduce here the unified self energy work modality. I mentioned it yesterday. It's an advanced consolidation technique, and Roger, bear with me here. I'm going to try to demonstrate this and explain it in as short as I can, just to give people time to ask questions for you. All right. Oh, and I know you know this modality as well. Do you have a comment for people, like how this worked for you in the past? Like if this is something that you would recommend to people?
You're talking about the unified self?
Yes.
Oh, yes. That was always one of my favorites, and I do it at the beach a lot.
Okay.
Because my experience with connecting with my inner higher power, this pretty much brings that right on.
Yes. That's why I wanted to bring this in here, advanced consolidation. Okay, so just real quick, consolidating our energy means to pull it into to pull it together. All right, it's like a condensation, if you will. Most of us actually project our energies out. And again, oftentimes addictive patterns or such as white shadow actually promote this. So we're projecting our energy out all day long, and we are not actually really aware of where our energy goes. And quite frankly, for an energy worker, a lot of times people's energy fields look very frazzled, fragmented, dented, very asymmetrical, and not in a very good shape, really. Okay, so when a person's energy is kind of like all over the place, or when it is very unorganized, all right, then it typically leads to our etheric immune system, our ability to withstand outer energies to come in and influence our own energy. All right, it takes that down. And so, in conjunction with yesterday and today, today's subject, yesterday we talked about energetic first aid, right? These typical family situations in the holidays. Today, I want to talk about consolidation in the sense of what Roger mentioned here, and that is this feeling of inner emptiness, of loneliness, of externalizing the higher power and not really being able to connect with it. How consolidation works with that, namely that it pulls everything into the center. And the best way to visualize this, okay, is we're working with video here, is that you think of yourself as an energy field. Most people think of it as a sphere or egg-shaped or cube-formed. It doesn't really matter what kind of shape or what kind of dimensions you visualize, but however you see or picture your energy, see your heart center, this part here, sort of in the middle of your chest, as where your energy is the most condensed. Okay, this is the center, the heart center, the center of your center. And there is something that can be explained with quantum mechanics and so forth. There's something that we call zero field that connects us to the universal divine field. I don't want to go there. I just want to let you guys know that all you really need to do when you feel attacked, when you feel like you're under the influence of outer stuff too much, and or that you're under the influence of something and you can't even pinpoint it, is that you need to remember that your energy is the strongest in this center, kind of like a black hole, but in a good way.
I was thinking that today, Jona, it came in several different instances where light bulbs were a good example of interaction with people, and this would work in this case also. The old style of light bulbs that are lit from the center, right?
Yes, and that is kind of like instead of focusing too much on projecting your energy outwards and what other people think of you, and I need to project my light here, and I need to illuminate this, which all, quite frankly, leads to a decreased etheric immune system. And often the reason why empaths and energetically sensitives are so susceptible to other people's emotional or mental or physical abuse. All right, so what I'm about to show you is, because it's energies, I can only basically describe it to you and then do it myself and invite you to do this with me. But the unified self, without going too deep into the energy center, the chakra work, all right, is based on feeling your center. And this can be done with very simple techniques or tools such as breathing. We talked about that yesterday. Drinking water. I just mentioned this on the sidelines, but grounding, how Jeff showed us yesterday, they can help us to feel our center again. Okay, and I do recommend the breathing part, because if all else fails, we will always be able to breathe. Okay, so when energy work gets too fancy, guys, then it's not really feasible anymore. You have to be able to apply this in any kind of situation. But let's just assume that you know all this and that you meditate regularly and you know how to find your center. The unified self works with each of your energy centers and creates sort of a concentric motion around your center, pulling in all the excess energies from around, within, and on all levels of energetic sensation or perception, pulling it within into the center. So it's basically like say, if you have this heart center right here, right, and you're looking at your energy as composed of many different layers, even if you don't know nothing about chakras, okay, it's layers, and all you really need to do is increase the radius from that little heart center from right here and pull everything into your center from within, around you, above and below you. And I suggest that you use your breath with doing this, because as you breathe in, it has a sort of this sort of pulling in effect. Okay, you visualize pulling in a certain layer, like this part of my body, or this part of my emotion, or even this thought. You can even do this with a thought, okay, that you picture your thought somewhere up in your head, and you visualize yourself as you breathe in, just pull this into your heart, and as you breathe out, and this is now very important, to release it sideways, just like we practice with the I am breathing. You go sideways, you go wide and not high. You can also go low, but like into the ground, like Jeff taught us yesterday as energetic first aid. Okay, but for consolidation, it's really important that you go wide, because as you are pulling all these energies into your heart center, you're also slowly increasing your radius. And with that, I want to remind everybody that your radius is not just in front of you. That's one of our sort of busy people diseases, is that we can only sort of picture our energy going forward and upward, but it also needs
kind of like you're in a balloon.
Yes, it needs to extend in the back, and it needs to extend below as well. And somebody commented here in the chat earlier, saying it's like a Russian doll, and I love that. Thank you for saying that. Marcy Pusamarilla. I probably pronounced this completely wrong, but it is exactly like a Russian doll. And if you, and I just watched, by the way, The Rise of the Guardians, one of my favorite movies, very high vibratory level, by the way, where Santa asks Jack Frost, what is your center? And basically what he was asking was, what is your talent? What is your power? What is at the center of your power? And really like a Russian doll. They actually used a Russian doll as symbolism for this. So thank you for bringing this up. This is a very good analogy. And when you do a unified self-energy work technique, okay, and you can allow your inner guidance or your intuition to guide you on refining this, on doing this, you can, of course, use correct chakra terms, and transCODES, we work with 14 chakras, so we work with the 7 physical chakras, the gateways, the alpha and omega gateways to masculine and feminine energies, and then 7 consciousness chakras that are in our like aura, if you will, that lie outside of our physical. But to be honest with you, it doesn't matter. It can be simpler than that. You can just
it's very similar to, like, say you get out of work at the end of the day, you've had a really busy day, you take in a huge deep breath and you just let it all go. Yeah. This is like
for January, as announced. This is something I need to come up with in a different way, because here within the YouTube live setting, it's difficult for me to do this because I simply don't know who is there, and I can't get this connection with you guys going through this technology. Okay, so we're gonna probably gonna make an extra session at transCODES. All right, Roger Schwartz from Recover Your Heart. Thank you so much, and all of you from all over the world, all the way to Trinidad. Thank you for spending your time here with me and Roger, talking about addictive structure, addiction, shadow, white shadow, and externalization of our higher powers. Roger.
Yes, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Jona, for having me.
Yes, and if you would like to book a session with Roger, go to www.recoveryourheart.com or comment here in the section so that we can email it to you. I'll put it in the description of the video later. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And smash the like button right now, okay? Because we need to get this out. All right? This is important information. So push the like button and subscribe to the live stream here. Okay? See you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.